You wake up on a damp spring morning in 1347 and you've just received the most terrifying news of your medieval life. Your lord has granted you permission to build your own house. Congratulations, you're about to become a homeowner. Also, you're completely screwed. See, unlike today where you call a contractor who shows up with a crew and power tools, you're staring at an empty plot of muddy ground with nothing but your bare hands, some basic tools, and the growing realization that if you mess this up, your family will freeze to death next winter. No YouTube tutorials, no Home Depot, no building codes that tell you what's safe and what's a death trap. But here's the thing, you're going to build a house that could last centuries. Medieval peasants didn't have much, but they had one thing modern construction often lacks: the absolute necessity of getting it right the first time, because there was no second chance. Welcome to the most important DIY project of your life. Time to learn how your ancestors turned mud, sticks, and sheer desperation into homes that would shelter families for generations. Chapter 1. Finding your foundation. You are a medieval peasant in England, and your first challenge isn't building. It's convincing your lord you deserve a spot on his land. You can't just pick any random field and start hammering posts into the ground. Every inch of land belongs to someone, and that someone isn't you. You approach your lord with your hat literally in your hands, because taking it off shows respect, and also because you only own one hat. You explain that you've saved enough to build a house, that you can pay rent, that you'll work his fields during harvest time. If you're lucky, he agrees. If you're unlucky, he laughs and you spend another year living in your parents' one-room cottage with your wife, 3 kids, and a pig named Gerald. But let's say today's your lucky day. Your lord grants you a plot about 30 feet by 20 feet, basically the size of a modern garage. This will be your entire estate. First rule of medieval real estate: location, location, elevation. You want ground that slopes slightly so water runs away from your house instead of pooling around your foundation like a medieval swimming pool. You've seen what happens to houses built in low spots. The wooden posts rot, the floors turn to swamp, and the whole structure starts leaning like it's had too much ale. You also need to be near water, but not too near. Close enough that your wife doesn't have to walk a mile to fill buckets, but far enough that spring floods don't turn your living room into a river. Medieval flood insurance doesn't exist, so getting this wrong means starting over. Next, you consider wind patterns. The prevailing winds in England come from the southwest, so you want your door facing away from that direction. Otherwise, every time someone opens the door, rain and cold air blast straight into your main room. You kneel down and grab a handful of soil, squeezing it in your fist. Good clay content means strong daub for your walls, but too much clay means poor drainage. Sandy soil drains well but won't hold your wall mixture together. You're looking for that medieval sweet spot. Loamy soil with enough clay to be sticky, enough sand to be workable, and enough organic matter to hold everything together. Time to mark your boundaries. You drive wooden stakes into the ground at the corners of your future home. 16 feet by 12 feet for a basic cottage. If you're prosperous enough for a long house, maybe 33 by 13 feet, with one end for your family and the other for your livestock. Gerald the pig is getting his own room. Finally. Chapter 2. Gathering your arsenal. You're about to become a medieval construction worker, and your tool collection would make a modern contractor weep. You own exactly 8 tools: an axe, an adze, a saw, a hammer, a chisel, an auger, and a draw knife. That's it. With these 7 pieces of iron and wood, you're going to build an entire house. Your axe is your best friend. This isn't a modern splitting axe designed for firewood. This is a broad axe with a wide, sharp head, perfect for shaping timber. You'll use it to fell trees, strip bark, and rough shape every piece of wood in your house. The adze looks like someone attached an axe head sideways to a handle, and it's perfect for hollowing out joints and smoothing surfaces. Think of it as your medieval router. Your hammer is simple but effective. An iron head on a wooden handle, perfect for driving wooden pegs. But tools are only part of your arsenal. You also need materials, and here's where medieval life gets interesting. You can't just drive to the lumberyard and order pre-cut boards. Everything you need, you have to find, harvest, and prepare yourself. First, timber. Oak is the gold standard. Incredibly strong, naturally resistant to rot and insects, and capable of lasting centuries. But oak trees belong to your lord, and cutting one without permission is a serious crime. Fortunately, many lords offer house bot, the right to take specific trees for house construction. You spend weeks walking through the forest, examining trees with the eye of someone whose life depends on making the right choice. You're looking for oak with a specific curve that could become cruck blades, the curved timbers that will form the skeleton of your house. Finding a tree that naturally grows in the exact arch shape you need is like winning the medieval lottery. For smaller timbers, you might get hazel, willow, or ash. These trees grow straighter and faster than oak, perfect for the wattle that will form the base of your walls. You'll need hundreds of thin, flexible branches, each about the thickness of your thumb and 6 to 8 feet long. Then there's gathering clay from riverbanks, cutting straw from harvested fields, collecting stones for your foundation, and finding enough animal dung to mix into your wall plaster. Yes, animal dung. Your walls are literally going to be held together with poop, and this is considered high-quality construction technology. Winter is actually the best time to cut timber. The sap is down, making the wood drier and less likely to split as it seasons. You cut your trees in late fall, then spend the winter months seasoning the wood and preparing your tools. By spring, everything is ready for the great building season. Chapter 3. Laying the Foundation of Forever. You are standing in the pre-dawn darkness of a spring morning, and today you begin building your house. Your neighbors have agreed to help, not out of charity, but because tomorrow they might need your help building their barn, and medieval society runs on these reciprocal arrangements. First task, laying your foundation. This isn't just about keeping your house level. This is about preventing your entire investment from rotting into the ground within 5 years. Medieval builders discovered that timber in direct contact with soil equals disaster, so even the humblest peasant house needs some kind of barrier between earth and wood. If you're lucky enough to live in an area with good building stone, you'll lay a proper stone foundation. Nothing fancy, just rough stones about 6 inches to a foot high, stacked without mortar. Poor peasants can't afford lime mortar, which is found only in manor houses and churches. Instead, you fill the gaps between stones with clay mixed with chopped straw. If you don't have access to good stone, you'll use large timbers laid horizontally as sills. These sleeper beams raise your wall posts off the ground and distribute the weight of your house across a wider area. You choose your biggest, straightest oak timbers for this job. Now comes the crucial step, preparing the sites for your main structural timbers. If you're building a cruck house, the most common peasant construction, you need to position the cruck blades that will form the skeleton of your building. These are pairs of curved timbers that arc from the ground to the peak of your roof, each pair forming a natural A-frame. You dig shallow holes for the cruck bases, about 18 inches deep and filled with stones for drainage. The cruck blades themselves are marvels of medieval engineering. Each pair comes from a single tree that was split in half lengthwise, ensuring the two sides are perfectly matched mirror images. Your neighbors help you raise the first cruck pair. This moment is terrifying. If you've miscalculated the angles or the foundation isn't level, the entire structure could be unstable. But medieval builders had centuries of experience getting this right. The curved timbers lock into place with a satisfying solidity that tells you the house is going to stand. One by one, you raise additional cruck pairs, spacing them about 12 to 16 feet apart. Each pair is connected to the next with horizontal beams called tie beams and wall plates, creating a rigid framework that can support tremendous weight. As the day ends, you stand back and look at the skeleton of your future home. This framework will outlast you, your children, and probably your children's children. Medieval cruck houses regularly survived 3 to 4 centuries with proper maintenance. Chapter 4. Weaving Walls from Nothing. You are 6 weeks into construction, and now comes the most intricate part of medieval house building, creating walls that will keep your family warm and dry, using nothing but sticks, mud, and centuries-old knowledge. Time to build your wattle. You start by installing vertical stakes between your main timber posts. These stakes, called staves, are driven into the ground or fitted into holes bored in your horizontal timbers. They're spaced about 6 inches apart and stand about 6 feet high. Now for the weaving. You take your harvested hazel or willow branches, called withies, and begin weaving them horizontally between the vertical stakes. Over one stake, under the next, over the third, under the fourth, exactly like weaving a basket but on a massive scale. Each row locks the previous row in place, creating a surprisingly strong lattice. This work requires patience and skill that modern people rarely appreciate. Each withy must be bent carefully to avoid breaking. The tension has to be just right, tight enough to create a solid base for your wall plaster, loose enough that the wood doesn't snap. The rhythm becomes almost meditative. Bend, weave, tuck, move to the next row. Your neighbors drop by to help with the more difficult sections, particularly around doorways and windows where the weaving gets complicated. After several days of weaving, you step back to admire your work. The walls look like enormous baskets with gaps between the woven branches that you could stick your fingers through. But this is exactly what you want. The gaps give your wall plaster something to grip onto. Now comes the daubing, and this is where medieval construction gets gloriously messy. Your wall plaster is a mixture that would horrify modern sensibilities but represents centuries of trial and error optimization. The base is clay-rich subsoil, the kind of sticky earth that clings to your boots after rain. To this, you add sand for strength, chopped straw for binding, and the secret ingredient, animal dung. Fresh horse manure is preferred, though cow dung works too. The dung adds fibrous material that prevents cracking and provides natural preservatives that help the wall resist water damage. Before you get grossed out, remember that this mixture, when properly prepared and dried, is odorless and incredibly durable. You mix your daub by trampling it with your feet, adding water gradually until you achieve the consistency of thick porridge. Your children help with this process, laughing as they squelch through the mud mixture. Application requires teamwork. You work from both sides of each wall panel simultaneously. You grab handfuls of daub and press it firmly against the wattle, forcing the mixture through the gaps so it keys into the weaving on both sides. The goal is to completely fill the lattice while building up smooth surfaces on the interior and exterior faces of the wall. This is skilled work. Apply too little pressure and the daub won't bond properly. Too much pressure and you push the mixture completely through the weaving, wasting material and creating weak spots. Each section takes most of a day to complete. You daub a panel, let it set up slightly, then smooth the surface with wooden tools. As each panel dries, it shrinks slightly and develops a few small cracks. These you'll fill with fresh daub before applying the final finish. Within a month, your walls are complete and drying in the summer sun. They're several inches thick, incredibly strong, and naturally insulated. The thermal mass of all that clay and earth means your house stays cool in summer and holds heat well in winter. Chapter 5. Crowning your castle. You are in the final stretch of construction, and the moment of truth has arrived. Everything you've built so far has been leading to this. Creating a roof that will protect your family from English weather that can shift from sunshine to torrential rain in minutes. Medieval roofing is an exercise in controlled geometry using materials that grew in the ground. Your cruck blades naturally form the roof structure, but they need support. You install rafters, smaller timbers that run from the peak of each cruck down to the wall plates, creating a series of triangular frames that will support your roofing material. These rafters have to be precisely positioned. Too far apart and your roof covering will sag or collapse. Too close together and you're wasting precious timber. Medieval builders settled on spacing rafters about 18 inches apart. Now you need to create a surface for your thatch. You install roof battens, thin strips of wood running horizontally across the rafters, creating a grid that will hold your roofing material. Time for the thatching, and this is where medieval construction becomes almost magical. Thatch isn't just some straw thrown on a roof. It's a sophisticated weather protection system that, when properly installed, can last 30 to 50 years and shed rain better than many modern materials. Your thatch starts with the straw left over from grain harvest. After the grain is threshed, the stalks are carefully sorted. The longest, straightest pieces become your roofing material. Wheat straw is preferred because it's naturally water-resistant and lies flat. You begin thatching at the bottom edge of the roof, laying the straw in thick bundles called yelms. Each bundle is about as thick as your arm and laid so the cut ends of the straw face downward, while the natural root ends face up the roof. This orientation is crucial. Water runs down the smooth stems and drips off the cut ends. The first row of thatch is secured to your battens with wooden pins or twisted straw ropes. Each subsequent row overlaps the previous one by about 2/3, creating multiple layers of protection. Rain hitting your roof has to work its way through 3 or 4 layers of straw before reaching the wooden structure underneath. Working up the roof, you compress each layer of thatch with a wooden tool called a legget, ensuring the straw lies flat and tight. Loose thatch doesn't shed water. It absorbs it. Compressed thatch becomes almost like a waterproof blanket that rain simply runs off. The peak of your roof requires special treatment. You create a ridge, either by bending thatch over the peak and securing it with wooden pegs, or by installing special ridge tiles made of fired clay if you can afford them. But there's one more crucial detail: the smoke hole. Since your house has no chimney, smoke from your central hearth needs somewhere to go. You leave a carefully planned gap in your thatch, surrounded by special fire-resistant tiles to prevent the straw from igniting. As you install the final bundles of thatch, neighbors gather to watch. A successful roof raising is cause for celebration in medieval villages. Your house is now weather-tight and ready for occupancy. The whole process, from foundation to finished roof, has taken about 3 months of intensive work. Your house is complete, but your work is just beginning. Chapter 6. The Forever Project. You are the proud owner of a medieval house, and congratulations, you now have a part-time job for the rest of your life. Medieval houses aren't built so much as they're constantly maintained, repaired, and improved. First order of business, the interior. Your floors are beaten earth, hard-packed from generations of feet tramping the same paths. You spread fresh rushes or straw over the floor each week, providing insulation and absorbing spills. Your central hearth is the heart of your home, literally. It's where you cook, where you gather warmth, where your family socializes in the evenings. The hearth is simply a circle of stones on your earthen floor with no chimney to carry away smoke. Instead, smoke rises to the roof and exits through your carefully planned smoke hole. Furniture is minimal and handmade. A rough wooden table, benches for seating, chests for storage, and beds that are really just wooden platforms with straw mattresses. Everything is designed to be moved easily when you need to clean or when the space serves multiple purposes. But the real work is seasonal maintenance, and this never stops. Every spring, you inspect your thatch for damage from winter storms. Loose bundles need to be resecured, and worn sections need fresh straw. You also check your wattle and daub walls for cracks that appeared during the freeze-thaw cycles of winter. Summer is lime washing season. Many peasant houses get an annual coat of lime wash, a mixture of lime and water that brightens the interior, provides mild disinfectant properties, and helps seal small cracks in the wall plaster. Fall means preparing for winter. You check every joint in your timber frame, looking for movement or splitting that could compromise the structure. Wooden pegs that have worked loose get driven back in or replaced entirely. Every few years, major maintenance becomes necessary. Thatch sections wear out and need complete replacement. Wattle panels damaged by weather or accidents need to be rewoven and redaubed. Timber posts in contact with the ground might start to rot and require replacement. But here's the remarkable thing. With proper maintenance, your medieval house could last centuries. Archaeologists regularly find peasant houses from the 13th and 14th centuries still standing and habitable. Your house also grows with your family. As children are born and the family prospers, you might add lean-to extensions against the main structure. A separate kitchen to keep cooking smoke out of the main living area. A small workshop where you can practice a trade during winter months. If you're particularly successful, you might eventually rebuild entirely. Medieval villages are full of families who started with simple one-room cottages and eventually constructed elaborate multi-room houses with separate areas for different activities. Your house becomes the foundation of your family's prosperity. Property ownership, even humble peasant property, provides security and social status. Your children will inherit not just a structure, but a homestead with established gardens, outbuildings, and connections to the community. In a world where most people own almost nothing, you've created something permanent using nothing but local materials, hand tools, and knowledge passed down through generations. You've proven that human ingenuity, community cooperation, and skillful use of natural materials can create homes that last for centuries. Epilogue. Building legacy from mud and dreams. You are an old peasant now, sitting beside the hearth in the house you built 40 years ago. Your grandchildren play on the same earthen floors where their parents learned to walk. The walls you daubed with your own hands have been repaired and repainted dozens of times, but the fundamental structure remains exactly as you built it. Looking back, you realize you didn't just build a house. You built a foundation for everything that mattered. This house sheltered your family through famines, plagues, and wars. It provided the security that allowed you to save money, improve your farming, and eventually buy more land. The house has changed over the decades. What started as one room with earthen floors now has wooden floors in the main living area, glass windows you saved 3 years to afford, and even a proper stone chimney that replaced the old central hearth. But the bones of the building, those crucked timbers you raised with your neighbor's help, remain exactly as you placed them. Modern people would look at your house and see primitive technology, but you know better. You've created something that works perfectly with its environment, using materials that renew themselves, with construction methods that can be maintained using basic tools and local knowledge. The wattle and daub walls you worried about so much have proven nearly indestructible. The thermal mass of all that clay keeps the house cool in summer and warm in winter. The thick thatch deadens sound and provides insulation that modern homes struggle to match. You think about the skills you developed building this house. Reading the land to choose the perfect site. Understanding timber well enough to select exactly the right trees for each purpose. Learning to weave wattle so tightly it would hold plaster for decades, mixing daub with just the right consistency to bond permanently with the wooden framework. These aren't just construction skills, they're a deep understanding of how natural materials behave and how to work with them instead of against them. You've become an expert in sustainable building before the words sustainable building were invented. Your house represents something that medieval people understood, but modern people often forget. That homes should be built for generations, not decades. That the best building materials are often the ones growing within walking distance. That community cooperation can accomplish things that individual effort cannot. The knowledge you've gained building your house has spread through the village. Young couples ask for your advice when planning their own homes. You've helped raise dozens of houses over the years, passing on techniques your father taught you and innovations you've discovered through experience. Your house stands as proof that ordinary people can create extraordinary things when they combine local knowledge, available materials, and the absolute necessity of getting it right. You didn't need architectural drawings or engineered lumber or power tools. You needed to understand your environment, work with your community, and build something that would last. The mud walls you worried would collapse at the first rain have sheltered 2 generations of your family. The timber frame you raised with trembling hands has supported thousands of meals, countless conversations, and all the daily moments that make a life. You built more than a house. You built a home. You built security. You built legacy. And you did it all with sticks, mud, and the knowledge that when people work together using time-tested methods, they can create things that last forever. The fire crackles in your improved hearth, casting dancing shadows on walls that have heard 40 years of laughter, arguments, stories, and dreams. Outside, rain patters on the thatch roof that still sheds water as perfectly as the day you finished it. Your house stands solid, warm, and welcoming, just as you built it, just as you intended, just as it will stand long after you're gone.